Welcome. Let's get into how to work as a consultant, specifically in the gig economy. Okay. And George, you get appreciation. I'm running this a little bit like a studio. I have a second PC, second monitor. That's just kind of my way of making sure it's presenting properly. So this is working as a consultant. It's really an alternative to permanent and full-time employment. And so it's really an opportunity for us to consider, if you've only been considering full-time work as your primary search, you may want to consider searching as a consultant or a temporary employee, not necessarily part-time, but temporary. It is a way to get yourself active and in the job market and to earn some income. So we will get into that right away. Want to let you know, come on, there it goes. There are some program caveats, just be aware. I am not an attorney, I'm not an insurance or a tax professional. I did see there is at least one attorney watching right now. Please stay mute. But I want to let you know that really what I'm doing is I'm talking to you as a friend. One friend who's been through this as a process. I was in a 30-year corporate career. Now I'm independent since 2014. Excuse me. And I'm trying to just give you my observations of my journey, my experiences to share with you. There'll be a number of times through the program that I'll actually remind you, you may need to consult with an actual tax or insurance or business attorney professional to see if what we're talking about applies specifically to you. So just be aware that that's the case. So I'm not one of these professionals, but I play one on TV, as I said on that old commercial. So we will get ourselves right now into the program and talk a little bit about what is the gig economy. And there are lots of definitions out there, and I'll just kind of sum it up. But companies now tend to hire contractors more, independent consultants, and temporary employees for a specific project. And that specific project is the gig. And a lot of us are concerned that it's very short term, and it's not always the case. There are short-term projects, and there are also long-term projects, but it tends to be very specific. And we'll talk later about contract to hire, but typically you go in the mindset that this is for a very specific need and contract. The gig workers, those of us, we are those independent contractors, or it could be a contracting firm that has employees or other part-timers that they put on a temporary project, or they may be very flexible type jobs. And that's what the gig workers are. So if we're working in the gig economy, we are gig workers. Oops. And but it is, for many of us, is going to be the future of work. It's really going to be a way for us to stay very competitive and professionally active in an economy, excuse me, that is working in this mindset of let's just get the projects done, let's get those gigs done. So what is a consultant? And really, you're someone who provides skills or service, expert advice to others professionally. And you may scratch your head and say, yeah, but that's an employee. Yeah, I get that. But you tend also to be working on a fixed project. So they bring you in for that expertise. They have a specific project in mind. And typically as the project winds down or ends, so does the contract. And in essence, what you are is you're a hitman. You come in to do a job and you go out. And I found these are the most popular and famous New Jersey hitmen that there are. And so I thought it was very relevant to bring these folks in. Let's talk a little bit about working as an employee and working as a consultant. And this is just a very high level chart. There's lots and lots of differences. None of them are hard or complicated, but I just want to do some of the basics that maybe you're most familiar with. Certainly when you're employed, you receive benefits. And for a lot of us, that's why we continue to look primarily for full-time employment. As a consultant, you typically don't get paid benefits. And we'll talk more about how your compensation works later, but it's all on you. Some people didn't know that your FICA tax, which is Social Security and Medicare, typically is 50% paid by the employer. It is another benefit. So when you're a consultant, you pay that yourself, all 15.3%. So typically the employer pays, 7.65%, pays half of it. So another benefit. So that's all on you. It's paid at tax time. You paid, on as employee, you're paid by a check. Typically every pay period. For some people it's weekly, bi-weekly, bi-monthly, however that is. And at the end of the year, your employer gives you a W-2. As a consultant, typically you're issuing an invoice. And at the end of the year, they give you a Form 1099, specifically a 1099 MISC or miscellaneous. Most of us are getting 1099s anyway from our banks or fund companies and whatnot. Those are 1099 INT for interest, DIV for dividends. There are others that are out there. Your income and payroll taxes are always paid in your paycheck. Usually it's a thing when you open up your paycheck and look at it is when you have your raza fraza moment, and how come they're taking so much out? But on the other hand, it's a nice convenience that companies are doing that. But you pay your income and tax quarterly, typically quarterly. Quarterly, you file estimated taxes, and at the end of the year with all our typical income tax, you file the full tax return. So you are paying it quarterly. That's what typically happens. Also, as an employee, you really have limited income tax deductions. There were some people that were taking some business expenses, deducting their home office. Maybe they travel with a laptop, even though the office gives them a computer. A lot of those have gone away with the tax law changes that occurred just a couple of years ago. So you will need to speak to your accountants about that. But typically, as a consultant, most of those tax deductions are still there. So I'm using my Logitech camera on my Dell PC and my HP monitor. I've deducted all these over the years. They are business expenses for me, and also part of my home office is deductible, but typically as an employee, it wouldn't be. And by the way, we're talking in the context of if you're a bit independent. Of course, if you are employed by a consulting company like in Adecco or Robert Half, if you're employed, you're really treated as an employee from benefits standpoint, tax-wise and taxes and all that, and deductions. So just be aware that we're talking really when you're independent. And we're going to talk about different independent company structures a little later. So what's in it for the client? Why is the client looking to hire consultants? Well, it's typically easier to hire and terminate consultants, excuse me. Sorry, a little bit of a frog in my throat. So it's typically easier. They don't always go through HR. They don't go through the legal department, but if they had to terminate an employee or bring on an employee, it goes through a different budget process and a different staffing process in terms of HR and legal. Typically, there's no long-term commitment, and you might argue, well, with full-time employment in an at-will state, there's no long-term commitment. And well, yes, that's true too. But you kind of know that this is going to be a 3, 6, 12-month, whatever contract. And it's just stated out there where when you're employed, you're kind of hoping that it'll last for a long time, and it may or it may not. Often they're looking for an objective, seasoned team member. Now, often when they employ people, they should be doing that as well. But a lot of times you're brought in as that hitman, as that person who specifically has a skill set that they want to fill. And sometimes as an employee, they'll bring you on maybe and teach you that skill set, but they're looking for someone that they're comfortable sticking with for a long time. And similar to the skills that the employed person doesn't have. They may bring you as an employee because they see you being a team member for a long time, and they will train you accordingly. So as a consultant, you come in with that skill, you come in ready to work almost on day one. And ultimately for companies, it can save them money. They're not paying for benefits, they're not paying for training, which of course can be expensive. They're not paying for your time off and lots of other things, other benefits that they may offer consultants. So it can be a money saver for them. But what's in it for you, the consultant? Well, it fills a resume gap. There is an unemployment bias. If a hiring manager has 2 resumes on his or her desk, has a choice between the employed person and someone who's unemployed, and they otherwise have similar skill sets, statistically, they're going to hire someone who's already employed. So this fills a resume gap. You don't have as many long, big gaps on your resume. You're usually paid more on an hourly basis than the employees. They realize it's short term. They realize that they're covering other expenses you may have, which we'll talk about later. I'm sorry, I apologize for this interruption. You do get a current position on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, in order to have a 100% complete profile or to have an all-star profile, you do need to have a current position. A current position has a start date, but doesn't have an end date. And a lot of us that have been out of work for a few months, it's about time you have to put an end date on that prior employer. But if you're a consultant, even if you're a consultant, but you're not currently on a contract, you are a consultant with a current position and 100% complete profile. You do develop a variety in your own experience and on your resume. You may have an opportunity to work in certain industries that you wouldn't as an employee, because the employer, sorry, is hiring you for your skill set and not necessarily for the companies that you worked for in the past. There's some people who would love to get into pharma without pharmaceutical experience, but if you're just a hot shot finance executive and they need you for a couple of months, they may bring you in even if you don't have that pharma experience. So it does help you get into a variety of roles. It also creates new opportunities that you may not already have. A lot of us have been scratching our heads and wondering why companies do hire younger people. Well, there are probably a lot of reasons, and Marty Latman gives a wonderful program, as Alex Freund and others do as well, about ageism. But the companies want your skill, they want your experience, they want your savvy, you're cool under fire, under pressure. So they will contract for people even if they're older, while they may not always hire younger staff. They're not as concerned about if an older person fits in a corporate culture or may ultimately more expensive than their benefits or whatever their reasons are. They just want you to come in, do that job, do well for them, and then when you're done, they'll let you go. So it creates new opportunities. And some people are willing to say, I'm willing to be a contract to hire, I just don't want to be an independent contractor. Well, a lot of times, contract to hire positions are only available if you're willing to be an independent consultant. So be open to it for that reason. The company may not have even realized they needed to hire you until you've worked there for 3 or 4 months. So be open to consulting positions and contract positions. But if you're not really quite sure and you're thinking, yeah, I really don't want to be a consultant, so let me kind of play devil's advocate a little bit as well. So why should you still not be a consultant? You just don't believe me just yet. Well, for one thing, you may not be treated as well as the employees. A lot of us have seen when we've hired consultants, the staff have cubes and offices, and the consultants might have a group of people pooled in a room. Employees may be going to the summer picnic and annual holiday party, and consultants are not invited. And so some people are really concerned about not being treated as well, not invited to all the corporate meetings for the project. That's actually, in my mind, short-sightedness on the project manager. You actually may be treated better. The shortest assignment I was ever on, contract assignment, was actually 3 days. I was on a 3-day contract. I found out on Friday, I flew out on Monday, flew home on Thursday. I was in suburban Chicago. Got there early in the morning after my morning flight, about 10 o'clock in the morning, saw the CIO, Chief Information Officer. He was damn glad to see me and put me in the office right next to him. And then he gave me a list of people I needed to speak with for the project. One of the first people was a senior accountant. And I walked over to her desk, introduced herself, and she later came back to my office and she kind of got angry. And she said, do you know how long I've been looking at this office? I should have had this office. You've been here for 1 hour and you've got my office. So I was treated a little bit better than her. So sometimes that is the case. You might not be happy. You'll get into an organization, you're on a contract, it's going to be 6 or 12 months, and you realize, oh my goodness, I'm going to be here for this time. I might not be happy. Oh, you'll move on. And by the way, you might get employed and you might not be happy. So don't use I might not be happy as an excuse for not being a consultant. Go in, do the job, get paid, get experience, and then move on to your next gig and your next assignment. And you might be happy. There are unpaid administrative tasks. You do have to prepare your own invoices at the end of the year. You may have to provide extra timesheets, other information like that. You do have to spend time near the end of your contract or between contract to look for your next work. But you know what? Give yourself extra large hourly rates. You get larger hourly rates. You'll be surprised what your hourly rate was when you were actually working as a full-time employee. We're going to talk more about that later. So you'll make up for some of the unpaid administrative tasks that you have to do for yourself. And what a lot of people say is, I just won't be a consultant, I need benefits. I've had a number of people over the years tell me, I'm willing to wait as long as it takes to find that full-time job to get the benefits. And I understand it is important, especially the medical benefits can be very expensive, and you want to get those benefits. And I typically ask the question when they tell me they'll wait as long as they can, how are you paying for benefits now? And some people don't have very good options. They say, well, I'm paying for a very expensive plan, or we're on this state Medicaid program I knew a couple people on, so not a lot of options, not a good quality plan for them. Well, you know what? If you're working as a consultant, even if it's a 6-month contract, you can buy benefits. You're getting paid plenty of money on that time. So take some of that money, don't take the money out of pocket, use some of the income that you're getting from your work and buy the benefits. You know, it may only be short term. I want to do something long term. I need money. I need, you know, cover my expenses. I get it. So I did a little quick math. If you were on a 6-month contract at about $50 an hour, that's about $50,000 a year. Every once in a while asks, is that before or after taxes? Well, if you're getting paid $50 an hour before taxes, $50,000 is going to be before taxes. So that's, consider it like your salary. So a 6-month contract, $50,000, where you may be only sitting waiting for full-time employment. So for many of us, do consider, take that contract. It may really be a benefit. Do I need my own company? So if you're going to work independently, some people are concerned, I need a company, how can I do that? Well, there are a couple of options later that we'll talk about, but typically, no, you don't need your own company. You can work as just a solo entrepreneur, and just hang a shingle out the front of your house or apartment, and you are a consultant. But what if my client does require a corporation, that I do have my company? Well, there's some really easy options for you there as well. For one is, find someone you know that already has a company. Ask them if they'll hire you. Do realize if they hire you, you'll be an employee, so they're going to collect the hourly rate from the client, and you will get paid. They'll take out your taxes and manage all that payroll for you. So if you're getting paid, you know, the $50 an hour up front, you're not going to get all of it, because your friend who has the company has some expenses as well and will manage you as an employee. But that's one way to do it. You'll work for that company. Another is you can reach out to another consulting company who does this all the time and ask them if they will hire you. I don't think this is the best option financially, but it is a very easy and convenient one. There's typically a consulting company that does consulting on a regular basis. They're going to take a big percentage of the hourly rate. It's what they do. So if you're getting paid that $100 an hour, don't be surprised if you hear they're getting 50% themselves. Now, they are going to cover the payroll taxes, but they want to make their money and profit as well. Typically, they're doing recruiting. They have costs as well. You may be able to negotiate their rate down a little bit because they didn't have any recruiting to do for you. You just called them up and said, hey, will you take on this contract? But it's available, but I don't know that's always the best option. A split placement company, this is actually a pretty good option. A split placement company is actually a professional employer. They typically don't do recruiting. What they are is they are a company that will hire you, engage in a contract with your client, and then that's how you establish the relationship to have the company. I've worked with one a number of times called Top Echelon, listed right there. I was looking for others. This was one that I found that seemed reasonable enough that if I was still in corporate, I would call them up and talk to them. There are a few others out there, but the way Top Echelon works is a consultant would come to me, I want to hire them. They don't have their own LLC or corp. So I'll say, talk to Top Echelon. They will hire you, and you'll come on as their employee onto our contract. And so, nice way to bring yourself onto a company. They typically take a much smaller chunk than the traditional consulting company. So be aware, that's typically a good option. And also, for a little independence, form your own LLC, form your own corp. Only takes a few weeks to do. It's not terribly expensive. We're going to talk about some of the differences among these in just a moment. And you are going to want to get something called an EIN, or employer identification number. It's like the social security number for a company. When you report your income, when you fill out your tax information for your company for yourself working for them, you'll give your employer the EIN. It also goes on your tax return. So you'll want to make sure that you get that. In New Jersey, and all this is in the context of my observations of working in New Jersey. This whole presentation is from that perspective. In New Jersey, it's about I think it's still $128 if you do the whole thing yourself by filing through the state's Treasury Department. So not terribly expensive to form an LLC. Now, here are some common forms of business entities in New Jersey. Now, please see the note at the bottom. This is one of those caveat moments. This is really a very high-level, oversimplified discussion of a few business entities that you can form in New Jersey. I'm just a friend talking to a friend. You will need to speak to the appropriate legal and financial consultants to see what does apply to you, and to the extent of the information I'm providing, how much of it is really accurate or appropriate for you. But it just helps you understand a little bit among some of the different types of entities that are out there. And there are many more than just these 4 that are out there. One is called a sole proprietor. That's basically you just at the moment saying, I am a consultant. You didn't form any real legal entity with the state. There's no filing creating an organization. There's no organization documents. If there's any sort of liability, and liability we mean in the workplace, that might be you're hired as a finance person, you're doing the books, you make some sort of mistake that causes the company a lot of money, they come after you to make up for the loss. So they're going to sue you, whatever. The liability is essentially unlimited. You don't have a company, they can't sue your company, they're going to sue you. And unless you have any kind of liability insurance, and we'll talk about that in a moment, they can come after all your personal assets. From an income tax perspective, you'll send them your invoices either at the end of the project or on an agreed time, like weekly or monthly. I typically do my invoicing monthly. And the tax reporting goes on your personal income taxes. It's what's called Schedule C. It's just a pass-through. So if you made $50,000 as a consultant, it just goes $50,000 right in your income tax. The next one, and it's really probably the most common for independent consultants, is called LLC, Limited Liability Company. There are a large number of business entities that are these limited liabilities. See what's the right one for you. But you do form the organization with the state. You do register with the state. You are a legal entity. My company, you see my logo in the lower right corner, Princeton Technology Advisors, is an LLC. The personal liability is limited. So if the worker who did the work caused any sort of liability at the office that the company would want to be reimbursed, well, the company will come after really 2 entities. They'll come after your company. Your company may not be worth a lot of money. I'm not saying that your company isn't. My company's not really worth a lot of money. I've got a desktop PC, I've got a laptop PC, a monitor, my camera that you're watching, $25,000, $30,000 worth of stuff. So not a lot of liability remedy that if a company sued my company. But they'll sue 2 people. They're going to sue you, your company, and they're going to sue the worker. That's just the way companies work. So it's possible that you may still have a personal liability in addition to your corporate liability. Now, if you have your LLC or your corp and you're the company and you put another contractor to do the work, they would sue your company and they would sue that contractor. So that's kind of what the limited means. Again, I'm oversimplifying this. You really need to talk to a professional. But the income does show up on your personal income tax, again, on Schedule C. And then there are things called corps. So usually you would have the abbreviation INC at the end. They are legal documents. Legal organizations, legal entities in the company. You do file what's called articles of incorporations, and you put bylaws together. So it's a bit more, a bigger process. It may be appropriate for you. The liability, the personal liability, is limited in much the same way. And some people have heard something, well, there's double taxation with corps. Well, with C corps and maybe others as well, there is. Because what happens is you're not being paid by the client, the corporation is, and they do file their own tax return. And then they pay you, even if it's your corp, you pay you a salary, and then your salary is taxed. And then there's certainly ways where your salary is an expense to the corporation. Is it truly a double tax? Well, talk to your accountant about that. But that's that one. And then the S Corp, it's another kind. I don't know a whole lot about the structural differences between them, so please don't chat me that question. But it shows up on your personal income tax. Instead of getting a 1099 or instead of getting a W-2, you get what's called a Form K-1. It's sort of a partnership type payment, and you get paid that way. One reason why you may consider going down the path of a C Corp, one reason may be dependent on the amount of income you're generating. You know, if you're generating income on an annual basis in the whole corporation, that's pretty close to your salary. An LLC would be just fine, I would think, as well would be a corp. If you're generating a lot more income, let's say a reasonable salary for someone like you is $75,000, but let's say you earned $175,000 in income. So you pay yourself a salary of 75, and that's your personal tax. The corporation is also taxed for the full 100,000 or the 175. Well, then what happens is there's $100,000 sitting in the corporation. So one kind of tax savings trick would be, at the end of the year, that 100,000, don't pay yourself a salary. Don't pay yourself 175,000. Pay yourself a corporate distribution. An accountant will tell you more about what's that really called, but it's not salary. And you can send yourself and give yourself that extra $100,000 as a corporate distribution. Why might you do that? It's not personal income tax. You will not pay the 15.3% employment tax on the distribution. So if you're making some good money, you may want to reorganize yourself, if you have an LLC, as a corp. A lot of times people ask, does it pay for me to create my LLC in a tax-friendly state like Delaware or Nevada? No. The reason why is an LLC is only within the state because it's on your personal income tax. It's taxed at your New Jersey state, if you're New Jersey or whatever state you live in. However, if you go down the path of a corporation, it may make sense to file a corporation in another state. So the corporation will be subject to lower state income tax, and then pay yourself a salary, which will be on your local state income tax. So at a real high level, that's just kind of some of the differences among business entities. So we will now take ourselves, give ourselves a little bit of a break. And so you can see if you need to take a personal break, if you need to get some breakfast, after all, we are the Breakfast Club. If you got some questions, I am now going to open up the chat and take a look and go back through some of the questions that you posted, if you did. And let's see. Give me a moment to just kind of quickly read through this. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Okay, a lot of good morning. Would like to hear how to become an approved vendor for a larger company like UBS, Beeline, that does not hire independents. So that's really from the perspective of networking and growing your business, which we're actually going to talk a little bit later down the road. I can't tell you what each company's practice is for bringing on and registering as independents, but clearly you're going to need connections, you're going to need a way in. There may be other companies that you can talk with, ask them for that type of advice, but we're going to talk about how to find business a little bit later. Let's see, like to connect. Good morning, like to connect. Good, you're using this to help encourage people to connect with you. That's good. And Adrian did my math, so $50 an hour is $104,000. $50 an hour, yeah, that's $104,000 a year. Yeah, so I think it's about $50,000 for 6 months. And I was trying to show that it's a lot of money for a 6-month contract, but of course double that. Yep, for the year. Many people are asking for LinkedIn invites on this chat. Is this chat available after the presentation? I will have to look to see. I know if we were on Zoom, the chats are available, so I will have to look. But you're all asking for LinkedIn invites. I have to see if we have the list of people available. I will forward that to Adrian to distribute appropriate for the group. You can also connect on Meetup, by the way. So join our Meetup group and connect through there. You can join our Breakfast Club of New Jersey LinkedIn group to see people that are there, and then from there become first degree connections. For clarification, I said it's about $128 to create an LLC. Yes, that's in New Jersey. That was the last rate that I saw at the end of 2019. I don't know if the state had raised it. And by the way, everything that we're talking about here with my limited non-official legal and tax information is all from the perspective of New Jersey. By the way, there are actually 4 states that don't even have LLCs. So 46 states do. New Jersey is one of them. So if any of you are thinking about now moving to Hawaii and semi-retire and start your LLC, Hawaii does not have an LLC. You'd have to go down a different path. Another state nearby, Massachusetts, does not have the structure of LLC. Okay, let's see. Oh, so Ed is promoting, take a look for the book Small Business for Dummies. Okay. What type of expenses can an LLC deduct? I'm actually finding anything that I use, just about anything I use for business, legitimately for business, is going to be deductible. It can be certainly the hard equipment that you use. If you set up in an extra bedroom or a corner of a room, an office, and you buy a desk, if you buy a computer, a monitor, your tech equipment, if you buy a laptop bag, if you're really using it for business and for setting up your office, it's deductible. If you are buying insurances, we'll talk more about that in a minute, those insurance premiums are deductible. Now, I'm not talking about, your own homeowner's insurance, although it may be, talk to your accountant, that if you're deducting a percentage of your house, a percentage of your house expenses can be deducted as well. So if you say 10% of my house is used for my business, in theory, and talk to your accountants, you may be able to deduct 10% of your heating expense, 10% of your electrical expense, and so forth. If you drive your car to your client, commuting is not typically deductible, but if you go on periodic meetings, go to client meetings, go to professional associations, the mileage is deductible. If you acquire the car and you lease it through the company, you have to see if that's appropriate or not. That may be deductible. So there's a lot that's available. Do speak to your tax professional more about that. How many billing hours are there in a year? Really, you can't do the math. It's about, if I remember, about 1,920. I think that's the number. But remember, you will have some other admin time that you may put in. They may not be direct billing. For instance, if you're working 9 to 5 for your client and you're putting in an hour or 2 a week on top of that for your administration, that's not typically billable time. The flip side is charge an extra $5 or $10 an hour on your rate, and you'll just cover your expense that way. For medical benefits, are there options? We're going to talk about that in a slide in just a couple of minutes. There is an option via the state as well. And we're getting near the end. Connect. Is there a difference between using the state treasury department or something like LegalZoom? Well, the end result is no. So if you go through the state's treasury department to form your corporation, you can go through an attorney. You can hire an attorney to do that. LegalZoom, the company corporation, these are online companies that will form them for you. I actually formed my company with LegalZoom. LegalZoom also sells other services on top. You can have access to attorneys. You can have access to a whole slew of documents like sample contracts and stuff like that. So you get other benefits if you want to use. You'll pay a little bit of a premium, but you may, and they'll dot all the I's and cross all the T's for you. Excuse me. So. LegalZoom, the company corporation, hiring attorney may be a very good option for you. So any events, anyone has landed? Are there donuts in the back of the room? I do not have donuts in the back of the room. I have a curtain back there. There's nothing of interest to you back there. But yeah, by the way, if any of you have landed, you want to just announce that in the chat, you're certainly welcome to, and then we will give you virtual applause. Can we send everyone on the call today? If that's available, I will give it to Adrian, and I will leave it up to Adrian to decide what to do. So whatever documentation I have for chats and notes and people who have participated, there are 69 on the call right now, I will give that to Adrian as well. Have you not generated annual income? Can you still file expenses? Remember, I am not an accountant, and I really don't play one on TV. Yes, you can actually have expenses that exceed your income. It's not uncommon for the first year or two when you start a company that your expenses do exceed your income because you're just starting up. And the IRS typically understands that. A lot of us will argue the IRS doesn't really understand anything when it comes to people. You do need to speak to your own accountant or tax professional to see what's appropriate. But it is not unusual to have a tax loss at the end of the year because of the way you're deducting expenses. The IRS does kind of keep an eye on people that have a tax loss year after year after year to make sure you're just not generating a tax loss from a hobby. But do speak to your own accountant about that. Okay, so we are at the end of our Q&A. So I get to close this up and we will move ourselves along right now. And we open the next curtain. Gee, I remember those days when movie theaters had an intermission. So how much should I charge? Marty, you're on the call today. It depends. So I think I should answer more questions with it depends, and not just say I'm not an accountant and I'm not an attorney. But there's a way to help guide you to what is the proper rate that I should charge when I'm an independent consultant. And so this slide is meant to give you a little bit of clarity and a little bit of idea for it. Really, you're going to charge what market rate is. You're going to charge what the market typically pays someone for your type of consulting service. And so what is the market rate? You have to do a little bit of research. I'll show you a link in a moment. But if a consultant like you typically receives $100 an hour, the market rate is probably somewhere between $75 and $125 an hour. Depending on certain outside situations or conditions, you might have a specific, unique expertise, you can charge a little bit more. You may be a bit of a generalist, you charge a little bit less. You'll figure that out. And so that's kind of how you gauge what market rate is. But here's an hourly calculator. And this will tell you how many weeks there are, how many hours there are in a year. You take your last annual salary and you divide it by 52 weeks. Now you know how much you got paid by week. And then you divide it by 40 hours. All right, you can divide by 35 or 37 and a half, but the goal is you want to try and understand what your hourly rate is. Some of us had IT and other back office. You said, well, I work 10 hours a day and I work 5 days. Don't go by that. Don't go by 50 or 60 hours. You weren't really paid for that overtime per se. So this gives you an idea of what your annual salary was and how much they were paying you. And you'd be actually quite surprised that you're probably being paid a whole lot less on an hourly basis than you anticipated. But you have to consider all your other costs as well. And I can't tell you what all those are. Everybody's situation is different. But you have to think about all of your benefits that you would normally provide yourself, and your insurance costs and other things, your rent and other things like that, any administrative costs, any PTO that you want to cover, your personal time off, everything that you want to include that's part of your compensation, and figure out what those costs are and do a similar calculation. And you add all that together and you'll come up with what you kind of need as an hourly rate, and use that as a little bit of a guide. This was a terrific website I found on Valerie's presentation last month. Valerie S. Williams did a presentation last month on the Essential Checklist, had a lot of websites that were there. And this company, I hadn't seen it before, so thanks, Valerie. Founder.com, the website, and how much to charge for consulting. So either take a screenshot of this or take your phone out, take a picture, or download the slides later, and you'll be able to get this website if I get through this a little fast. But this provided some additional information, may be a good resource for you as you begin to figure out what should be an appropriate salary for yourself. So what about errors and omissions insurance? Some of us will say, I never make errors and I never omit anything. Well, it's kind of a liability insurance that protects you, the company, or your workers from any sort of accidental negligence. And that's really what that's for. And it's a very ultimately involved process, or I should say initially involved process, that ultimately gets you to a simple annual fee. I can't tell you what errors and omissions insurance costs because each industry, each job has a different level of risk, and you have to talk to an insurance professional about it. But the basic idea is that it will provide a level of insurance protection if you get sued by your client company. And who gets sued? Well, in America, everybody does, or at least everybody involved. So it'll be your company, your LLC, or your corp, whatever, and it'll be the workers that you've brought on board. So now, if they were involved in the project. So do be aware of that. And there are a lot of details to errors and omissions insurance and things that you have to check. So I'll give you a couple of scenarios. You may say, well, I want $1 million of coverage because when I go to do the job, if ever there's an accident, I want to just make sure I have that protection. Others will say, well, that's not a problem. I have an umbrella insurance policy at home. It's good for $1 million. That covers me. No, umbrella insurance is personal insurance, not business insurance. It's likely not going to cover you. Maybe you have the type of business where every once in a while the delivery company, UPS, FedEx, Post Office, has to deliver a package to you. Maybe you're taking equipment, you're going to set it up on behalf of your client and then bring it and install it at your client. Well, what if the delivery person falls down on your front step and breaks his leg, injures himself? You may say, well, there's no problem. I've got homeowners insurance and I've got umbrella insurance. No, those are personal insurances. They may not cover you for your home office. Now, you can contact your insurance professional and get riders or attachments for business on your homeowner's policy, or you may get a separate insurance policy. What if you are in your car, you have sufficient automobile insurance, you're driving to your client because it's time to have a meeting or you're going to visit them, and you get into a car accident? Well, if you happen to let your insurance company know, well, I was on my way to a client meeting when I got sideswiped, your auto insurance company may say your car is not insured for business. So do understand there's a lot of little things that you just have to pay attention to. Speak to your insurance professionals about that. Do I need errors and omissions insurance? Well, it depends on your level of risk. It depends on your tolerance for risk. If you have a lot of money in the bank and you can tolerate these, if you got sued, maybe you don't need it. Are you doing a job that has the potential for risk? You may need it. If you're not, if you're only working in your home, never go out of the house, never order packages, if you think that's a risk you can tolerate, you may not. So you have to talk to other professionals about that. But this is just meant to give you a little bit of guidelines, open your eyes a little bit. This is my most favorite topic. Do I need to collect sales tax? And the reason why it's my favorite topic, I think, will come to light in just a moment, because I asked myself this question when I started my business: do I need to collect sales tax? And I decided to register, which is real easy to do anyway, just in case I did need to collect sales tax. And then I went to a presentation by the state of the New Jersey's Treasury Department, and that's where the fun was. So, yes, only for taxable products and services. Now, by the way, this is in the context, again, of New Jersey. So it is possible that if you are based in Pennsylvania, New York, or any other state, you have different guidelines. So do be aware. So yes, you do need to collect sales tax for taxable products and services. And you may ask, well, what's a taxable product? Well, in New Jersey, this is what I was told. Products are taxable unless New Jersey says they're not. That is the exact statement that the nice woman at the Treasury Department told me. I wrote it down and word for word, and then I put it on this slide. And I raised my hand and I said, how do I know which products are taxable? And then she directed me to a website on the Treasury site. I decided not to put it here because I found that the link changes every once in a while. But they provide this whole link in the page, a whole list of links in the page of hundreds of other links to different types of products. You do have to look at all the different types of products that you may be selling and representing. So I'll give an example. We know in New Jersey, in most cases, food is not taxable. Soda is food. I drink it once in a while. That's a taxable item. So you're buying it at the same supermarket that you're buying your milk. The soda is taxable. One fun one was, if you buy a handkerchief, a nice white handkerchief, you use it for personal hygiene, not taxable. If you buy a colored handkerchief in New Jersey, that's taxable. They don't consider a colored handkerchief a necessity. I guess they consider it as a pocket square. I've always thought that was a little short-sighted. If I had a bloody nose, I'd carry a red handkerchief. Why should I pay tax for that? that's just the world according to me. And then I was told services are not taxable unless New Jersey says that they are. And the nice lady looked at me and said, before you raise your hand, and she directed me to another web page that had more links, dozens and dozens of links of different types of services. So what I learned for myself as an IT consultant, the types of service I do are not taxable, because usually tax is paid to end users. Sometimes what may happen is it's a service that I'm performing to a company who in turn is performing it to an end user, and that's where they're collecting the tax. So, but if I do install some equipment, if I brought a server in, installed the server, the cost of the server is taxable because they are the end consumer of it, and the service to install it is taxable because it's tied to a taxable item. So think about other things more personally. If you've ever gotten a haircut, haircuts and gone to a salon are not taxable services. If you've ever gone to, buying food, of course, it's not taxable, but if you go to a restaurant or if you buy prepared food, that is taxable because the service went on it, and because the service combined with the food item, I guess, has become a taxable event. Just be aware. You do file your sales tax quarterly. There's a website. And if you have collected more than $10,000 a month in sales tax, you actually file monthly. But it's a web address and it's a form to fill out. I actually did mine last week for the first quarter. I basically said, this is how much money I earned in the quarter. And then the very next line is, this is how much is excluded from sales tax. And the rest of it became zeros. And I filed it. I don't file. Only one time I collected sales tax and had to file it. Now here's the web address for filing, to getting registered for sales tax. So if you don't take the screenshot or get your camera out in time, remember you can download these slides and get it then. And then you'll get a sales tax certificate like that. That is mine. What I learned after the Mueller report, I redacted my sales tax certificate so you don't steal anything. But this is what it looks like. I've just got it in a drawer with some other information about my company. And so you'll get a certificate like this. So how to become a consultant. So now that I've hopefully convinced you that it's really very viable, you should consider doing it. What really are the steps for doing it besides forming the company and other things like that? Well, the very first thing, if we were all sitting in the days in right now, I would ask you to repeat after me, maybe raise your hand, put your hand over your heart and say, I am a consultant. It's just that easy. And if you said that in your office right now or home office, you are now a consultant. That's really just as easy, just what it is to become a consultant. All the other things beyond that we talked about already and the few things remaining are just the details to get you to be there officially and legally. But very important, you need to identify your niche, where you're going to work, where you have knowledge, where you have experience, and also where you have a support mechanism. When you used to work for a corporation, if you ever stumbled across something that you didn't know, you had people in the company that you could talk with, your boss, your coworkers, people in other departments. But when you're working by yourself, you have to cultivate that on your own. Google is a great place to find resources, professional associations, lots of places, former colleagues. And also you want to make sure you understand where you really are an expert, because most companies, most individuals don't hire generalists. They hire experts. They hire you for your expertise. They may hire as a consultant. They may employ you as a generalist and teach you that one thing that's really important, but as a consultant, they want you to be an experienced person. So make sure you understand that. And then choose and research your target market. A lot of people in back office type positions, if you're in sales, if you're in consulting for IT, if you're consulting for finance, a lot of back office, you think, I can work anywhere. Yeah, but again, don't be a generalist. Figure out the market that you really want to penetrate or the industry that you really want to penetrate, and then you become known as the person who's experienced and the expert in there. So for me, I only target small business and not-for-profit organizations. I don't target big companies. It's just not a place I feel I can compete competitively. I can be competitive right now. Okay. Also, let your professional network know. Let them know you have chosen to be a consultant. Put them to work to you. There are a few of you on this call. I've seen you promote on the Breakfast Club in LinkedIn and on the Yahoo group every once in a while. You let us know what you're doing, what you're up to. Do the same thing for your corporation and for your business. And make sure you do include your accountant and lawyer, hopefully before you get started, but certainly let them know once you do. But you want to make sure you alert your network. And then also develop a business plan. Now, a business plan, a lot of people think is this big, bulky document that has lots of information, and it really doesn't need to be. It can be as simple as a page. My business plan is simply a page that basically talks about these things that I've already talked about. Identifying my niche, where do I have experience, where's my most knowledge, the target market I'm going to be, the types of companies I'm going to look to market myself to, not the specific companies, but the types of companies. And my business plan is essentially one page. If you want to know what the difference is between that and a 100-page business plan, besides 99 pages, those bigger business plans have to talk about projections, a lot of projections, how you see your growth going, what is your cash flow, how your cash flow is going to change, how are you going to facilitate the change in cash flow. There's just a tremendous amount of information that goes into that. The reason why that's necessary mostly is if you're going to seek some sort of financing. If you're going to go to venture capitalists, if you're going to go to banks, they're not going to lend you money unless you can prove to them or get them comfortable with the idea that you really have a good plan in front of you. So a business plan for most of us can really be very small, but it is important because it's good to take that out every once in a while and just remind yourself just what it is you do best. So some things to do now that you are a consultant. Well, name and create your company. I'm of the opinion the name of your company should not be a cute name. And I'm not going to use a cute name that I know that I use as an example in case that person is on this call. But if you had a company and you called it something like, oh, just for giggles, you said, oh, that's cute. And I say that statement all the time, and people know me as someone who likes to giggle. And you may want to say, well, what do you do? Well, unless you probably have like a clown service, it's not very indicative of what you do. If you're an IT person, if you're a finance person, if you're going to be a business analyst, you probably should have a name that kind of goes along with that. It's good when, for a Google search, Google likes to understand what you do, so it becomes relevant. And then create your company. So come up with a name. Now, the Treasury website, if you're going to be going down the path of creating an LLC or company, has a web page where you can look to see if your name is already used in New Jersey or in the state that you're applying. When you create a name of your company, name of my company is Princeton Technology Advisors, nobody else in New Jersey can register the same name. Now, it doesn't mean that someone can't be a sole proprietor with the same name. That's possible, but you want to, if you're gonna, you are going to want to create your company, either going down the path of through the state or begin to do the formation on your own. And then right away, register your web address. You do have to create a website, but register your web address right away, especially if you've registered your name through the state Treasury Department. The name of your company in the Treasury Department is in the public domain. Anybody can look. As I just explained, you're going to look to see if your name is available. If it is, you'll register it. Well, there are some unscrupulous people that will like to look for newly registered companies, and then they go on and they acquire website addresses all in advance. And you may find that you later, weeks after you've registered with the state, try to register your web address and it's taken. These people are called squatters. I've known 2 clients that that's happened to. Months ago, they registered the company with the state, and now they've come to me to help them acquire a web address and do some technology work for them. And I've had 2 cases where they were already taken. So register your web address right away. There are companies like GoDaddy that will do it, HostGator, Google Domains. The best value, in my opinion, is Google Domains. It's $12 a year, and they give you privacy and other things. GoDaddy and others are good companies as well, very reliable. You use them because they have much better customer support than Google. To navigate Google's customer support, if you bump into a problem, is a little bit harder. Just see what you like. If you're working with an IT person, let that register with Google Domains and let them deal with the customer support. Develop your professional support network. Remember, where do you have a support network. It could be former coworkers. It could be professional associations. Begin to get involved and alert that network of people and organizations, because as you begin to work on projects for your clients, if you stumble across something where you need assistance, you're going to have to answer and complete that for your client right away, and you may need to go to someone outside your own company to get that information for you. You may need to acquire certain licensing or certain certifications. Certain industries in the state of New Jersey, I suspect most states, do require licensing. Most consulting type businesses, business consulting, do not require state licenses, which you will have to consult with your own legal professional about that. And then there are certifications that you may need. For example, I am not a project management professional. I'm not certified by PMP. Professionally, in my corporate career, I've worked on very large and expensive projects. So except for the certification, I did all the work, but I don't have my certification. You have to see if you're going to compete in an industry as an independent where certifications matter, because you're hiring clients, your prospects may pick someone with those certifications over someone that doesn't have it. So you may need to get those as well. And certainly don't do this alone, right? No person is an island, to paraphrase. Make sure you contact your support network, certainly your support professionals like your accountant, your lawyer, your insurance professional, and others. Let your friends know, let your coworkers know. And also, here are a couple of organizations that you can reach out to that give out a tremendous amount of free advice and free webinars. SCORE is part of the Small Business Administration. The local chapter in New Jersey, there's one in Princeton. There's one in northern New Jersey. I don't remember the location for it. Just look at score.org. If you're in central New Jersey, princeton.score.org. They all run seminars and presentations. Most of them are free. They give you free mentoring. You'll get a mentor. So a great way to get started. Guidance for how to get funding. If you're in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, Bucks County has a SCORE chapter as well. So use that SBDC, look for the small business development centers as well. They have a tremendous amount of resources, and a lot of them are free. So don't do this alone. And of course, update your LinkedIn profile. At the very least, your LinkedIn profile is going to say, I am a consultant. Put down that you are a consultant on your LinkedIn profile. It's going to have a start date and no end date, so it can get you closer or maybe complete the process of becoming a LinkedIn All-Star and having a 100% complete profile. Even if you do not yet have a paying client, put it on your LinkedIn profile. Your bullet points may not be accomplishments, but instead they're going to be the service offerings and the other expertise that you have. Those are the keywords that will help get you a little bit attractive. So yeah, do add that right away to your LinkedIn profile. So let's talk about ways to generate business. Now that you're a consultant, you're going to have to generate business on your own. When you worked for a company in an office, the boss gave you a pile of stuff to work on, and you have to go find that on your own. There are local business networking groups. There's a lot of them that are out there. BNI, LATIP are very large organizations with chapters all over the country. A lot of more active towns actually have multiple chapters. I know Princeton has multiple chapters. The way BNI and LATIP works typically, the groups are medium-sized. They can get large. They're typically medium-sized. 15, 20, 30 people are probably good size. Anyone in the group typically are independent, or they work independently in a big company. That's what typically is happening. But when you join the local chapters of those groups, you are the only one of that profession, or the only one of that line of business. For instance, I belong to two such groups, one in Princeton and one in Bucks County. I am the only IT person in the group, and as long as I maintain my membership, there will not be another IT person. In one of the groups, there is somebody who's a content writer, say, for social media. I don't do that. So for me, that's fine. We don't compete, she and I. It may also be that a group can have multiple attorneys, but one might be a business law, and one might be a family law, and one might be employment law. There won't be two business law attorneys. But this is a great way to begin to develop your own internal referral network. You'll meet other professionals. You'll get very professionally friendly. You'll be able to essentially build a professional referral network, a very reliable one. Join Meetup.com. A lot of you are already on Meetup.com. If you're not, it is a very robust place to find to virtually find in-person groups, meetup groups that meet typically in person, although of course now with coronavirus and the concerns around it, even in-person groups are meeting virtually, but the Breakfast Club and most of the groups on Meetup do have in-person meetings. Do create a profile. It is completely free. There's no cost and to you. The costs are to the group owners. So for example, the Breakfast Club New Jersey's Meetup group is paid by the Breakfast Club. So as a member of Meetup, it's free. Create a profile, put keywords. There are keywords that Meetup will allow you to choose from. Use those. Don't only use ones that you'll put in there yourself. And then Meetup will begin to send you emails letting you know that there are groups in the area that meet your profile. Join, don't join, go visit once. You may like it, keep going back. If you don't like it, don't go back. But it's a great way to begin to find these groups. Some of the BNIs, Latips, and other business networking groups, they promote there as well. In addition to Meetup, join and participate in LinkedIn groups. So maybe you're already a member of the LinkedIn group for Breakfast Club of New Jersey. If not, that's your mission for a little later today, to reach out and join us. LinkedIn groups of all types, of all industries, personal, business. These are primarily or mostly virtual groups, although some have extended to become in-person groups, but it's a great way to make other connections professionally and personally, and may be a way to help generate and promote your business. Attend business and professional associations, attend conferences. You'll tend to find people in your industry of interest in these professional associations. In some cases, you'll find people like you. That may help you grow your professional network and your support network. In other cases, you'll find prospects, potential clients. So great places to meet business professionals. And always activate and alert your business network. And there's lots of ways to do that, whether it's on social media, sending an email, reaching out and calling. Keep yourself active and keep your network working for you. Okay. And yeah, be active on social media. I can tell you that this, as Marty Lattman would say, the best social media site to be on is, it depends. It depends on your clients, on your audience, on where the people you want to reach out to are typically going to be. You want to be on the same social media sites that your competitors are on, not just your clients. The reason why is, if your competitors are there, they figured this out. They figured out that the clients are there too. So Facebook is certainly the largest platform in the world, over 2 billion users, but it tends to be a big mix of residential and non-business people. If your consulting business is going to be towards business professionals, you may want to be on LinkedIn, 600 million business professionals. But if your business is going to be home cleaning services or home construction or something that's going to be more personal to people, Facebook may be a good place. Twitter, YouTube, great place, great videos to be found there. So there's lots. You have to find the one that's right for you and spend some time there. Just start with one. Social media can be terribly overwhelming. I'm sure George Pace can tell you that. Start with one and get good and comfortable with it before you move on to the other. If you look at social media as this kind of big elephant, you'll never take the first bite. Health insurance. It was a question that came up a little bit earlier in the chat. What if I need health insurance? So again, very high level discussion. We're going to talk, you will need to talk with a business professional, but it's basically a type of insurance that pays for your medical, your surgical, your dental, prescriptions, those sorts of needs. And do I need it? You have to figure out if you do need it. You may get coverage from a spouse or partner. You know, it's, I guess, I don't know if it's still technically a requirement based on the Affordable Care Act. I believe that may have been reversed. But if you need it for your own personal health reasons, yes, go out and get it. So at a very high level, some places where you can begin to find and get health insurance. If you're self-employed, you can actually call an insurance company and say, please sell me health insurance. And they will be happy to sell you a policy. This tends to be the most expensive way. And the reason why it is a lot of times insurance companies, when they have a big collection of people, like at a company, you bought insurance through your company, there are people that are using a lot of insurance and there are people using less insurance, and it averages out a risk. When you buy your insurance on your own, they will evaluate you individually, and your pricing can be very high if you have any sort of pre-existing condition or maintenance medicines or anything like that. So it is an option. You may get a lot of different flexibility, but you do have to consider that if this is the right option or not for you. Another is a group plan. Well, when you were employed, you were essentially in a group. You might have worked for a company of 100 people, 200 people, 5 people, whatever, and your company had a group plan. And so the costs can be a little bit less because the insurance company says the risk isn't just on one person in the group, it's an average risk among everybody in the group and becomes a little less expensive. Typically, as an individual, you don't get a group plan because you're the only person, but you can find professional associations do offer their memberships the ability to buy health insurance. So not all of them do, some do. I don't think you typically see that with chambers of commerce. One terrific organization, the New Jersey Business and Industry Association. They're a private organization that really represents the interests of all businesses in New Jersey. They don't target only small business and independent business, but that's a large part of their membership. Their membership is about, I think, $325 a year to join them, but then there's a whole host of services that you can buy at a discount. Shipping services, office supplies you can purchase, and others, including healthcare. So you can join them, and if the cost of healthcare that they can buy through them is less than $325 of a savings compared to independent insurance, it may be worth becoming an NJBIA member, getting the insurance and other benefits through them. The healthcare exchange, healthcare.gov. It's actually called the Affordable Care Act, and it's also known as Obamacare. But register on healthcare.gov. Now, by the way, healthcare.gov, the Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, is actually not insurance. It's really insurance guidelines. It's the rules that insurance companies that want to compete in the state must follow. And so once you register on healthcare.gov, and it's easy to register and get an account, you then can begin to shop for insurance. And depending on what your state you're in, there'll be different insurance companies that are there. They typically offer a range of policies at different levels. Some have a high deductible and maybe less expensive. Some may cover more types of coverages. Some will have less type of medical coverages. You have to look and compare them and pick the one that's right for you. And there is typically, well, I believe in New Jersey and other states, a state level of insurance it's offered through the exchange as well. It's kind of a Medicaid type of policy, really meant for people who are in a lower income, or at the very least currently in a low income scenario. So that could be available as well. There are insurance professionals that you can talk with who can also give you some guidance on this. And Medicare, if you are 65 or older, you are eligible to collect or to sign up for Medicare. Actually, you are required to sign up for Medicare when you reach 65. There may be a little bit of a grace period of a few months before and after. Now, that may be very useful for you if you are 65, but the other people in your home, if you have children in your home or a spouse or partner that is not yet 65, they cannot be covered on your Medicare policy. That would only apply to you. Medicare does have, I'll just call it basic insurance. I'm not going into all the details, mainly because I don't know all the details. I'm not yet 65. But there are supplemental plans that you can buy through insurance carriers that help give you a more robust coverage. So, in summary, made it to the finish line. Consulting, it's an alternative to permanent employment. And in the gig economy, this may become more and more relevant to many of us. So be open to the idea. Okay. And while there are pros and cons, some of the pros are it is going to fill a gap on your resume. So if your ultimate goal still is to have full-time employment, you want to keep and show that you are very active in the employment market. There is unemployment bias. You do get to develop a variety of experiences. You get to make your resume a bit more robust, and you'll get paid. Rather than continuing working from home looking for work, you can get paid as a consultant. You may actually get paid more in the short term because of the rate, the ability of you to charge rates a little bit higher, and it may lead to a contract to hire opportunity. And you don't need to become an LLC or a corp. but you can. There may be benefits to you to doing so, so it may be a good idea. And then what you do is you declare, I am a consultant, and get started. So that is our meeting for today. I want to thank the Breakfast Club for allowing me to present this. This was a fun opportunity, and I hope you got some good information out of it. So thank you. Goodbye, everybody.